The giant screens in Earth Central Command showed the alien delegation arriving at the space station. Admiral Susan Morgan watched with a tight jaw as the aliens walked through the docking bay. The Zith representative had blue skin and 4 arms. The Volnar delegate was shorter with gray scales and large eyes. The third alien from the Eldar species moved like flowing water on 6 tentacle-like limbs. "They're early," said Captain Frank Miller. Standing beside Susan, "They know exactly what they're doing," Susan replied. She straightened her uniform and nodded to her staff. "Let's not keep the Galactic Concord waiting." The meeting room had a large oval table with the Earth flag displayed prominently. Susan and her team took their places as the aliens entered. Earth diplomat Paul Harris rushed in last, slightly out of breath. "My apologies for the delay," Paul said with a practiced smile. He had been Earth's main representative during the 2-year negotiations with the Concord. His dark hair showed new streaks of gray, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. The Zith spoke first, its translator converting the clicks and whistles into English. "The Galactic Concord welcomes humanity to the interstellar community. Today we finalize the Treaty of Proxima Centauri." Paul nodded. "Earth is honored to join the Concord. This marks a historic moment for humanity." Susan knew the treaty would give humans access to faster-than-light technology and trade routes spanning hundreds of star systems. It would open up new planets for colonization and bring advanced medical knowledge, but she also knew there would be a price. The Volnar delegate placed a device on the table that projected the full treaty text. "Before signing, we must review the Naval Limitation Clause again." Susan felt her stomach tighten. This was the part she had been fighting against for months. The Eldar's tentacles moved in a pattern that indicated formality. "Humanity has achieved much in a short time. Your species went from primitive flight to interstellar travel in less than 2 centuries, but your history shows concerning patterns. Every species has conflicts in their past," Paul said carefully. "True," the Zith replied, "but few species continue to build weapons at such a rate even after achieving global peace. The Concord cannot risk introducing a potentially destabilizing force into galactic society." The Volnar pointed at specific sections of the treaty with a clawed finger. "The Naval Limitation Clause states that Earth and its colonies may not build military vessels exceeding 100,000 tons, with weapon systems limited to defensive capabilities only." Susan couldn't stay quiet any longer. Those limitations would leave Earth colonies vulnerable to pirates and non-Concord threats. The Eldar's skin changed color slightly. "The Concord provides protection to all member worlds. But your patrol ships would take weeks to reach our outer colonies," Susan argued. "We need to defend our own people." Paul shot Susan a warning look. The negotiations had been too long and difficult to risk now. The Zith leaned forward. "The limitations stand. Humanity may build defense platforms around colonies and small patrol ships within the specified limits. Nothing more." After the meeting, Susan paced in her office while Paul sat heavily in a chair across from her desk. "We can't sign this treaty," Susan said. "It leaves us too vulnerable." Paul rubbed his face. "We don't have a choice. Without Concord technology, it will take us centuries to develop our own FTL drives. Earth needs this treaty." "They fear us," Susan said. "With good reason," Paul replied. "They've studied our history, world wars, nuclear weapons, our rapid military development. Most conquered species took thousands of years to reach space. We did it in decades." Susan looked out the window at the Earth below, blue and peaceful. "So we just accept these limits?" "For now," Paul said. "We sign, we learn, we adapt." 3 months later, Susan was at the Luna base reviewing the final designs for Earth's allowed patrol ships when engineer Kevin Wright requested an urgent meeting. Kevin was a brilliant ship designer with wild red hair and a habit of working days without sleep. He arrived carrying physical papers instead of using digital files. "I found something in the treaty," Kevin said, spreading the papers on Susan's desk. "A loophole," Susan raised an eyebrow. "The treaty has been analyzed by hundreds of legal experts, not by engineers," Kevin said with a grin. "The Naval Limitation Clause specifically prohibits warships over a certain size and weaponry, but it defines warships in a very specific way." He pointed to a section of dense legal text. "A warship is defined as a vessel designed primarily for combat operations, with propulsion, weapons, and command systems integrated for military purpose. Susan read the section again. So what if we build something that isn't primarily designed for combat? Kevin's eyes gleamed with excitement. What if we build a massive deep space construction platform? Something to help build colonies and repair ships? The Conquered would never allow weapons on a civilian vessel, Susan said. Not weapons, Kevin corrected. Tools. Very powerful tools for cutting, moving, and processing asteroid material. Tools that, with minor modifications, could serve other purposes. Susan felt a smile forming. How big could this construction platform be? The treaty doesn't limit civilian vessels, Kevin said. We could build something massive. Something that would make the Concord's biggest ships look tiny. Susan studied the young engineer. This is risky, Kevin. If the Concord realizes what we're doing, they could impose even stricter limitations. Kevin shrugged. They banned us from building warships. They didn't ban us from building monsters. 2 days later, Susan called a secret meeting at Luna Base. She invited only those she trusted completely. Paul Harris, Kevin Wright, propulsion expert Olivia Martinez, and weapons specialist Daniel Lee. Olivia was small with intense brown eyes and a reputation for creating engine systems that broke theoretical limits. Daniel was a former Special Forces soldier who had found his calling designing defensive systems for space vessels. Susan sealed the room and activated jamming devices to prevent any listening technology from working. What? I'm about to propose walks a dangerous line, Susan began. If anyone wants to leave now, there will be no consequences. No one moved. The Conquered has left us vulnerable, Susan continued. They claim they'll protect us, but their response times to our outer colonies would be measured in weeks. Pirates and hostile species will notice this weakness. Paul nodded. Already the Vraks have been testing our borders. They're not part of the Conquered and don't respect its rules. Susan looked at each person in the room. Kevin has found a way to work within the treaty while still protecting ourselves. We're going to build something the galaxy has never seen before. She nodded to Kevin, who activated a holographic display showing a massive vessel unlike anything in Earth's fleet. This is Project Leviathan, Kevin said. Officially, it's a deep space construction and maintenance platform. Unofficially. He smiled. It's our monster. As the group studied the design, Susan felt both hope and fear. They were about to challenge the Concord's assumptions about humanity. And she couldn't predict how the aliens would respond when they discovered what humans were capable of building. If we do this, Paul said quietly, there's no going back. Susan looked at the design floating before them. We never wanted war, but we won't leave our people unprotected. If the Conquered won't let us build warships, then we'll build something they've never imagined. The Mars shipyards buzzed with activity as workers moved across the massive skeleton of Project Leviathan. 6 months had passed since the secret meeting at Luna Base, and what had started as plans on paper was now taking shape in the cold vacuum of space. Kevin Wright floated near one of the enormous support beams, checking measurements against his tablet. He still couldn't believe Admiral Susan Morgan had approved his crazy idea. Now he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Impressive, isn't it? Olivia Martinez drifted up beside him. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and she wore the standard red jumpsuit of the engineering corps. Terrifying is more like it, Kevin replied. If the Concord realizes what we're really building, Olivia shrugged. On paper, it's exactly what we told them. A deep space construction and maintenance platform. Not our fault if it happens to have certain capabilities they didn't anticipate. Kevin pointed to the massive circular opening at the front of the structure. Have you figured out the power requirements for the main processing array? I'm working on it, Olivia said. We'll need to build our own reactors. Nothing in the current Earth fleet can generate enough energy. The processing array was officially designed to break down asteroids for mining operations. The fact that it could also slice through the hull of an enemy ship was a detail they kept out of the official documentation. A voice came through their comms. Wright Martinez, report to Bay 12. We have company. They found Daniel Lee waiting for them in the observation room overlooking Bay 12. Through the window, they could see Paul Harris talking with 3 Concord officials. The Zith representative was examining holographic projections of Leviathan, while the others asked questions. How long have they been here? Kevin asked. 20 minutes, Daniel answered. His face was grim. They requested an unscheduled inspection. Olivia swore under her breath. Can they do that? The treaty allows for periodic inspections of all human shipyards, Daniel said. But they usually give notice. They're getting suspicious, Kevin said. The door opened and Admiral Susan Morgan entered. Her uniform was crisp, but Kevin could see the tension in her face. The Concord delegation wants to tour the construction site, Susan said. Paul is stalling, but we need to make sure everything looks legitimate. Hide anything that might raise questions. Half the systems aren't even installed yet, Olivia protested. Then there's less to hide, Susan replied. Kevin, you're coming with me to give the technical tour. Your job is to bore them with engineering details until their eyes glaze over. Kevin nodded. I can do that. An hour later, Kevin floated through the skeletal frame of Leviathan with Susan and the three aliens. The Zith representative named Valdar asked the most questions. This structure is enormous, Valdar said, its four arms gesturing at the framework around them, much larger than necessary for a maintenance vessel. Kevin launched into his prepared explanation. Efficiency of scale. By building one large platform instead of several smaller ones, we reduce overall costs by 37%. The main processing bay needs to accommodate the largest colony ships for repairs, and the storage areas need to hold replacement parts for a wide variety of vessels. The Eldar representative, Thenis, moved gracefully through zero gravity. These reinforced bulkheads seem excessive for a civilian vessel. Safety protocols, Kevin said quickly. Deep space contains many hazards. Micrometeorites travel at extreme velocities. One puncture in the wrong place could be catastrophic. And these large circular openings? Asked the Volnar representative, pointing to what would eventually house Leviathan's concealed weapon systems. Docking bays for repair drones, Susan interjected. The platform will deploy hundreds of automated units for external repairs and construction. Kevin could tell the aliens weren't entirely convinced, but they had no proof of any treaty violations. Everything they saw could be justified for a civilian vessel. After the inspection, Susan called an emergency meeting in a secure room. The Concorde is watching us more closely now, she told the team. We need to accelerate the timeline. We're already pushing the workers to their limits, Olivia said. The power systems aren't ready for testing yet. Then get them ready, Susan replied. Her voice softened. I know I'm asking for the impossible, but we don't have a choice. Intelligence reports show increased Vrax activity near our outer colonies. The Concorde is doing nothing about it. Daniel, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. My team has been working on the maintenance tools. We've designed them to look completely innocent until activated. The transformation systems are hidden within the structural components. Good, Susan said. Paul is running interference with the conquered diplomats, but we can't count on that forever. The moment they realize what Leviathan can really do, they'll shut us down. Kevin pulled up new designs on his tablet. I've been working on ways to make the exterior look more civilian. More bulky, less streamlined. No one builds a warship that looks like this. The image showed Leviathan with added external components and irregular shapes that disguised its true capabilities. It looked ungainly, almost ugly. Nothing like the sleek warships the Conquered and other species flew. It's perfect, Susan said with a smile. Hide in plain sight. The next 3 months were a blur of activity. Kevin barely slept as he moved from one section of Leviathan to another, solving problems and overseeing construction. Olivia worked miracles with the power systems, creating a network of reactors that could channel enormous energy to any part of the vessel. Daniel's team secretly installed systems that could transform maintenance tools into devastating weapons. One night, Kevin found himself alone in the central control room, running simulations. The door opened and Paul Harris walked in, looking exhausted. How was the latest Concord meeting? Kevin asked. Paul sighed and dropped into a chair. They're still asking questions about Leviathan. I keep telling them it's just a big maintenance platform, but I don't think they're buying it anymore. Have they threatened to stop the project? Not yet. They have no proof we're violating the treaty. Paul rubbed his eyes, but they've increased patrols near Mars. They're watching. Kevin pulled up the latest construction reports. We're at 70% completion. Another 4 months and the basic structure will be done. We might not have 4 months, Paul said. The Vrax hit another transport ship near Tau Ceti yesterday. 43 people dead. Kevin felt a chill. Did the Conquered respond? They sent a strongly worded message to the Vrax leadership. Paul said bitterly. No ships, no enforcement, just words. Then we need to work faster, Kevin said. 2 weeks later, Olivia called Kevin to the main engine room. Her face was flushed with excitement. "I think I've solved the power distribution problem," she said, showing him complex diagrams on her screen. "We can route the energy through these superconducting channels. It will give us 3 times the output we originally planned." Kevin studied the designs. This would make Leviathan faster and more powerful than anything in the conquered fleet. "Exactly," Olivia said with a grin. "And it's all justified in the official specs as necessary for moving large asteroids and powering the processing systems." "You're a genius," Kevin told her. "I know," she replied with a wink. As they worked, alarms suddenly blared throughout the shipyard, red lights flashed, and the automated announcement system activated. "All personnel, emergency protocol 7. This is not a drill." "Repeat, this is not a drill." Kevin and Olivia looked at each other in shock. Protocol 7 meant an imminent threat to Earth or its colonies. They rushed to the command center where Susan was already giving orders. The main screen showed a star map with multiple red dots moving toward one of the outer colonies. "Vrax ships?" Kevin asked. Susan nodded grimly. "A full battle fleet heading for New Montana. 2,000 colonists with minimal defenses." "Where are the Concord ships?" Olivia asked. "They've sent a peacekeeping force," Susan said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "2 vessels that won't arrive for at least a week." Kevin looked at the half-finished Leviathan on another screen. "We're not ready. The systems haven't been tested, the weapons aren't calibrated. We don't have a choice," Susan cut him off. "How quickly can Leviathan be made operational? Not perfect, just capable of moving and fighting?" Kevin and Olivia exchanged looks. "Maybe 3 weeks if we work around the clock," Olivia said. "But it would be dangerous. Some systems could fail." Susan looked back at the map showing the Vrax fleet. "The people on New Montana don't have 3 weeks." "We'll find a way," Kevin promised, though he had no idea how they would do it. "We'll get the monster ready." The New Montana colony sent distress signals every hour. Each message grew more desperate as the Vrax fleet approached. Kevin played the latest transmission again as he worked on Leviathan's control systems. "This is Governor Alan Ross of New Montana," said the tired voice. "The Vrax fleet will reach our orbit in 5 days. We have evacuated as many people as possible to the underground shelters. Our defensive systems can't stop a full invasion. Earth Command, please send help." Kevin shut off the recording and rubbed his eyes. For 10 days straight, he had barely slept. Around him, hundreds of engineers and technicians worked frantically to make Leviathan operational. The massive construction platform was being converted into humanity's last hope. Olivia floated through the doorway, her jumpsuit stained with coolant fluid. "The main reactor is online. We're at 60% power capacity. Will that be enough?" Kevin asked. "It has to be," she replied. "We don't have time for the secondary systems." Admiral Susan Morgan's voice came through the comm system. "All section leaders report to the command center immediately." When Kevin and Olivia arrived, they found Susan standing before a large tactical display. Daniel Lee was already there, along with other key personnel. Paul Harris joined by video from Earth, where he was still dealing with the conquered representatives. "The situation has changed," Susan said without preamble. "The Concord peacekeeping force was attacked by the Vrax. Both ships were destroyed." Shocked murmurs filled the room. "The Vrax have never directly challenged the Conquered before," Daniel said. Susan nodded grimly. "Intelligence suggests they've been watching how the Concord responds to threats against human colonies. They've concluded the Conquered won't risk a full conflict to protect us." "Are the Conquered sending more ships?" Olivia asked. "They're considering their option," Susan replied, her voice bitter. "Meanwhile, the Vrax have changed course. They're no longer heading just for New Montana." She pointed to the tactical display. The red dots representing the Vrax fleet had split into 2 groups. One still moved toward New Montana, but the larger group was on a direct course for the Sol system. "They're coming here," Kevin said, feeling cold. "They're coming for Earth. We estimate 2 weeks before they reach our outer system defenses," Susan confirmed. "The Earth fleet can slow them down but not stop them. Not with the limitations imposed by the treaty." Paul spoke up from the video screen. "The Concord Council is in emergency session. I've formally requested they intervene, but they're moving too slowly. Some members are suggesting this is just a human problem that doesn't concern the wider Concord. So we're on our own," Daniel said. Susan straightened her shoulders. "Which means we need Leviathan operational now. Not in 3 weeks, now." That's impossible, Olivia protested. The power systems aren't stable. The main processing array hasn't been calibrated. The transformation mechanisms for the defense systems are still being installed. Make it possible, Susan ordered. Strip down the plans. What's the absolute minimum we need to move and fight? For the next hour, they worked through each system, cutting out everything that wasn't essential. Kevin's heart sank as he realized what they were creating would be far from the carefully designed vessel they had planned. It would be dangerous, unstable, and might fail catastrophically, but it was their only option. 7 days, Kevin finally said. That's the best we can do. And even then, it will be risky. The Vraks won't wait 7 days, Susan replied. You have 5. As the meeting broke up, Kevin pulled Olivia aside. We need to talk about the power distribution system. They found a quiet corner where they could speak privately. There's a fundamental flaw in the current configuration, Kevin said, showing her the schematics on his tablet. If we push the reactors to full capacity without the secondary coolant systems, we risk a cascade failure. Olivia studied the diagrams. You're right. The energy pathways weren't designed to handle this much power without the full cooling infrastructure. Can you fix it? Kevin asked. Olivia bit her lip. Not in 5 days. Not properly. I could rig a bypass system, but someone would need to manually adjust the flow rates during operation. From where? From inside the main power junction, she said quietly. It would be dangerous. Radiation levels will be high, and if the system overloads, we'll find another way, Kevin said firmly. But over the next few days, as they raced to complete Leviathan, no better solution emerged. The bypass system was their only option to prevent a catastrophic reactor failure. On the 4th day, as Kevin was installing the final components in the command center, an alarm sounded. The shipyard's defensive sensors had detected an incoming vessel. Vraks? Kevin asked the security officer. No, the officer replied. Concord Registry. It's an inspection ship, Kevin swore under his breath. The Concord had chosen the worst possible moment to check on their project. He quickly contacted Susan. Stall them, she ordered. Use any excuse. We need 12 more hours to get Leviathan ready for launch. But the Concord ship was insistent. It docked at the shipyard, and 3 official inspectors demanded immediate access to the construction site. Paul Harris arrived just in time to intercept them. Esteemed representatives, Paul greeted them with a forced smile. We weren't expecting an inspection today. The lead inspector, a stern-looking Eldar, fixed its large eyes on Paul. The Concord has received disturbing reports about this facility. We are here to ensure treaty compliance, when of course, Paul said smoothly. But as you can see, we're in the middle of a security drill. Perhaps we could reschedule for tomorrow? The inspection will proceed now, the Eldar insisted. Paul had no choice but to lead them toward the construction bay where Leviathan waited. He sent an urgent message to Susan. Inspectors coming. Hide everything. Across the shipyard, teams scrambled to conceal the military aspects of Leviathan. Panels were hastily attached to cover weapon systems. Workers in spacesuits floated around the massive vessel, trying to make it look like normal construction activity. Inside Leviathan, Kevin and Olivia worked frantically to lock down the control systems that would reveal the vessel's true purpose. We can't let them see the command center, Kevin said. It looks nothing like a civilian control room. The reactor room is worse, Olivia replied. No civilian vessel has power systems like these. Before they could finish hiding the evidence, the airlock opened. Paul entered with the 3 Concord inspectors. Despite his best efforts, he had been unable to keep them away. This is Chief Engineer Kevin Wright, Paul said, his voice tense. He can answer any technical questions about our construction platform. The Eldar inspector looked around the control room with suspicion. This appears highly sophisticated for a maintenance vessel. Kevin forced a smile. Efficiency is important when working in deep space. The systems are automated to reduce crew requirements. The Volnar inspector pointed to a station that Daniel hadn't fully converted. That appears to be a targeting system. Guidance system, Kevin corrected quickly. For precisely positioning the vessel near asteroids and damaged ships. The inspectors didn't look convinced. The Zith representative moved toward a sealed door. What's behind here? Just the power distribution center, Olivia said. It's offline for maintenance right now. We would like to see it, the Eldar stated. Before anyone could respond, another alarm blared throughout the shipyard. This one was different from the drill alarms. It was the real emergency signal. Susan's voice came over the general comm system. Attention all personnel. Vrak scout ships have been detected in the outer system. This is not a drill. Prepare for possible attack. The Concord inspectors looked at each other in alarm. You need to return to your vessel immediately, Paul told them, for your own safety. The Vraks wouldn't dare attack a conquered facility, the Eldar insisted, though it sounded uncertain. The Vraks destroyed your peacekeeping force 3 days ago, Paul replied. They've shown they don't respect conquered authority. The tactical display in the control room activated automatically, showing multiple red dots approaching the shipyard. The Concord inspectors stared at it in shock. Those are military-grade sensors, the Volnar observed. Kevin didn't bother denying it anymore. You can file a complaint about treaty violations after we survive this attack. Right now, you need to leave. The situation had changed everything. With Vrak ships approaching, there was no more time for deception. Susan's voice came through Kevin's private comm channel. Launch Leviathan now. Ready or not, it's time. Kevin looked at Olivia, who nodded grimly. They both knew the vessel wasn't ready. Critical systems were untested. The power distribution problem remained unsolved. But they had run out of time. Get the Concord inspectors to safety, Kevin told Paul. We're launching Leviathan. As Paul hurried the protesting inspectors away, Kevin activated the shipwide announcement system. All Leviathan crew report to your stations immediately. Launch sequence initiating in 30 minutes. The monster they had built was about to awaken, ready or not. Leviathan broke free from its construction moorings with a groan of metal and a burst of thrusters. The massive vessel moved slowly at first, its bulk making it seem ungainly and awkward. Maintenance drones and small construction craft scattered out of its path like startled fish. In the command center, Kevin gripped a support rail as the deck vibrated beneath his feet. Warnings flashed across multiple screens. The hastily completed systems protested their sudden activation. Main engine output at 40%, called out a technician. That's all we can safely manage without the secondary cooling systems. It will have to do, Kevin replied. He looked at the tactical display where 5 Vrak scout ships approached the shipyard. They were small but fast, likely gathering intelligence for the main fleet. Admiral Susan Morgan stood at the central command station. Her uniform was wrinkled from days without rest, but her voice remained steady. All stations report. Engineering ready, Olivia's voice came through the comm. But the power distribution system is unstable. We've implemented the bypass, but someone needs to monitor it manually. Weapons systems online, Daniel reported from his station, though I hesitate to call them weapons. The asteroid processing tools are powered up and ready. Susan allowed herself a small smile at Daniel's joke. What they had built wasn't technically a warship with weapons. It was a construction platform with very powerful tools. Take us out, Susan ordered. Intercept course for the Vrak scouts. Leviathan moved away from the Mars shipyard, gradually picking up speed. Its true nature remained hidden beneath the bulky exterior. From a distance, it looked like nothing more than an oversized work platform. On the observation deck, Paul Harris watched with the 3 Concord inspectors. He had been unable to convince them to leave, and now they were effectively trapped on board for the vessel's maiden voyage. This is a direct violation of the treaty, the Eldar inspector said, its skin changing colors with agitation. This vessel is clearly designed for combat. This vessel is designed for survival, Paul corrected. The treaty doesn't forbid us from defending ourselves. The Concord Council will hear of this, the Zith representative warned. If we survive, Paul replied simply. The Vrak scouts detected Leviathan's approach and changed course to investigate. They were sleek, predatory vessels with forward-swept wings and visible weapon ports. Unlike the humans, the Vraks had no treaty restrictions limiting their military technology. They're scanning us, a sensor operator reported. Let them look, Susan said. They'll see a civilian construction platform with minimal defenses. They're not buying it, Daniel warned as the scouts moved into an attack formation. They're targeting us. Susan nodded to Kevin. Time to show them what our monster can do. Kevin activated the transformation sequence they had worked so hard to conceal from the Concord. Across Leviathan's hull, what appeared to be maintenance equipment and construction tools began to change. Panels slid aside, revealing hidden systems beneath. Processing arrays rotated to reveal their true purpose as energy weapons. Asteroid grabbers unfolded into massive defensive shield projectors. On the bridge, Kevin enabled the full tactical systems. The civilian control interfaces slid away, replaced by military-grade command systems. Processing arrays online, Daniel announced. Target acquisition active. The Vrax scouts fired first. Energy beams lanced out toward Leviathan, striking its newly deployed shields. Shields holding, Daniel reported. They clearly weren't expecting that from a civilian vessel. Return fire, Susan ordered. Let's show them what humans can build when properly motivated. The main processing array, actually a massive energy cannon, powered up with a rising hum that vibrated through the entire vessel. When it fired, a blinding beam shot across space and sliced through one of the Virac scouts. The vessel exploded in a brief silent flash. The remaining scouts scattered, clearly surprised by the devastating response. They're calling for reinforcements, the communications officer warned. Good, Susan said grimly. Let's draw them away from the shipyard. Leviathan pursued the fleeing scouts, its engines pushing harder. But as the massive vessel accelerated, warnings blared from the engineering section. Power fluctuations in the main reactor, Olivia reported, her voice tense. The bypass system isn't handling the load. Kevin checked the readings and felt his stomach drop. We're pushing too hard too soon. The system needs time to stabilize, but there was no time. The tactical display showed more Vrac ships approaching, not just scouts now, but full combat vessels. We need more power to the shields and weapons, Susan said. Can we get it? Olivia's voice came back after a moment of silence. Yes, but someone needs to manually adjust the bypass regulators. From inside the junction room, the radiation levels in that room, and Kevin began. I know, Olivia cut him off. I'll go. No, Kevin protested. I designed the system. It should be me. You're needed on the bridge, Olivia replied firmly. I know the power systems better than anyone. It has to be me. Before Kevin could argue further, Olivia closed the channel. He looked at Susan, who gave him a somber nod. She's right, Susan said quietly. We need you here. The Vrax combat vessels arrived. 8 sleek warships designed for one purpose. They spread out trying to surround Leviathan. They're targeting our engine sections, Daniel warned. Rotate shields to compensate, Susan ordered. Bring the main array to bear on the lead ship. Leviathan's ungainly bulk turned slowly in space, bringing its most powerful weapon to face the Vrax formation. But as the processing array powered up, more alarms sounded. Power fluctuations increasing, a technician reported. The reactor is becoming unstable. In the power junction room, Olivia worked frantically at the manual controls. She wore a radiation suit, but it provided limited protection at best. Sweat dripped down her face inside the helmet as she adjusted flow rates and diverted power through the bypass system. Rerouting power to the main array, she reported through her comm. You should have enough for one good shot. On the bridge, Kevin watched the power levels stabilize temporarily. Fire now before we lose it again. The processing array fired, its beam cutting through space toward the Vrax formation. 2 enemy ships vanished in the blast, but the others scattered and returned fire. Impacts rocked Leviathan as some shots penetrated the shields. Damage to sectors 7 and 12, a damage control officer reported. We have hull breaches. Seal those sections, Susan ordered. Redirect power to forward shields. In the junction room, Olivia fought to maintain power balance as the systems fluctuated wildly around her. A conduit burst nearby, spraying coolant into the air. Warning lights flashed red as radiation levels climbed. The bypass is failing, she reported, her voice strained. I need to manually reconnect the secondary systems. Olivia, don't, Kevin started to say. No choice, she cut him off. Without full power, Leviathan is just a big target. She removed her gloves. She needed bare hands for the delicate work, and reached into the exposed junction box. The radiation counter on her suit beeped faster. On the bridge, Kevin watched in horror as the Vrax ships regrouped for another attack run. Without full power, they couldn't survive another coordinated assault. Olivia, status? He called desperately. After a moment of silence, her voice came back weaker now. Secondary systems online. You have full power. Make it count. The readouts on Kevin's console jumped as energy flooded through Leviathan's systems. Shields strengthened. Weapons powered up to maximum. All arrays online, Daniel announced. We have targeting solutions for all enemy vessels. Susan didn't hesitate. Fire everything! Leviathan transformed before the eyes of the watching Vrax. What had appeared to be an ungainly civilian vessel revealed its true nature. Multiple energy beams shot out simultaneously from processing arrays, cutting tools, and construction equipment that had been disguised weapons all along. The Vrax ships tried to evade, but Leviathan's attack was too widespread. 3 more enemy vessels exploded, another spun away, crippled and leaking atmosphere. They're retreating, Daniel reported as the remaining Vrax ships turned and accelerated away. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Kevin was already running toward the door. I need to get to the junction room. Olivia! The damage control officer looked up with a grim expression. Junction room is reading extreme radiation levels. Life signs are weak. Kevin ran through Leviathan's corridors, pushing past damage control teams and wounded crew members. When he reached the junction room, the radiation warnings were flashing red. He grabbed an emergency suit and pulled it on before overriding the door lock. Inside, he found Olivia slumped against the wall. Her radiation suit was damaged and her bare hands showed signs of radiation burns. She looked up as he entered, a weak smile on her face. It worked, Kevin told her as he carefully lifted her. We drove them off. The monster you helped build just saved a lot of lives. As he carried her out, emergency medical teams were already waiting. The doctor looked grave as they transferred Olivia to a stretcher. We need to get her to the medical bay immediately, the doctor said. Radiation exposure is severe. On the bridge, Susan received reports from across the vessel. Damage was extensive but repairable. The Vrax scouts had been destroyed or driven off. But it was a temporary victory at best. The main Vrax fleet? She asked. 10 days passed in a blur of repairs and preparation. Leviathan hung in space near Jupiter, waiting for the Vrax main fleet. The damage from the first battle had been mostly repaired, though some systems still operated at reduced capacity. Kevin sat beside Olivia's bed in the medical bay. She was conscious but weak, her body fighting the effects of radiation exposure. The medical team had done everything possible, but recovery would be slow. You should be on the bridge, Olivia told him, her voice hoarse. The Vrax fleet will be here soon. There's time, Kevin replied. He held up a tablet showing the latest sensor readings. They'll reach Jupiter orbit in about 6 hours. Olivia tried to sit up but winced in pain. Are the power systems stable? We fixed the bypass and installed the secondary cooling systems, Kevin said. Your modifications are working perfectly. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Good. Our monster needs to be at full strength. Kevin was about to respond when his comm unit beeped. Admiral Susan Morgan's voice came through. Right, report to the bridge immediately. When Kevin arrived, he found Susan talking with Paul Harris and the 3 Concord inspectors. The atmosphere was tense. What's happening? Kevin asked. Susan nodded to the main view screen. It showed a transmission from Earth Central Command. The image was split. One side showed the approaching Vrax fleet, the other showed multiple ships of unfamiliar design. The Concord Council has finally decided to act, Susan explained. They're sending a fleet to intercept the Vrax. Kevin looked at the Concord inspectors in surprise. What changed their minds? The Eldar inspector stepped forward. We sent our observations of the Vrax attack and Leviathan's response. The Council has recognized that the Vrax threat extends beyond human space, and they've acknowledged that our construction of Leviathan was justified given the circumstances, Paul added. They're suspending judgment on treaty violations until the crisis is resolved. Kevin felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They weren't facing the Vrax alone anymore. The Concord fleet will arrive in approximately 12 hours, Susan continued. But the Vrax will be here in 6. We still need to hold them off until reinforcements arrive. Can we do it? Kevin asked. Even with the repairs, Leviathan wasn't designed to face a full battle fleet alone. Susan's expression was grim but determined. We don't have a choice. Earth's defense fleet is mobilizing, but they're still bound by treaty limitations on their ships. Leviathan is our best hope. The next few hours were a flurry of final preparations. Kevin worked with Daniel to optimize the weapon systems. The processing arrays had been fully calibrated after the first battle, and they now understood how to maximize their effectiveness. The Vrax don't know what we've learned, Daniel said as they worked. They think they're facing the same vessel their scouts encountered. Let's hope that gives us an edge, Kevin replied. When the Vrax fleet arrived, Leviathan was waiting. The massive construction platform floated near Jupiter's orbit, seemingly alone against 20 Virax warships. On the bridge, Susan stood calm and focused. Open a channel to the Vrax fleet. The communications officer worked at his console. Channel open. Vrax vessels, this is Admiral Susan Morgan of Earth Fleet Command. You have entered Earth sovereign space and attacked human installations. Withdraw immediately or face consequences. The response came quickly. The Vrax commander appeared on screen, a reptilian face with yellow eyes and scaled skin. Humans, the Vrax hissed. Your pathetic defenses cannot stop us. The Conquered has abandoned you. Surrender your planets or be destroyed. Susan cut the transmission. So much for diplomacy. Battle stations, Leviathan systems came fully online. What had once been disguised now operated openly as the weapons they truly were. The vessel no longer needed to maintain its civilian facade. The Vrax fleet is spreading out, Daniel reported from his station. They're trying to surround us. Let them try, Susan replied. Activate all defense systems. Prepare main arrays for sequential firing. The Vrax attacked first, dozens of energy beams converging on Leviathan. The shields flared brightly as they absorbed the assault. Shields at 80%, a technician called out. Holding steady. Return fire, Susan ordered. Target their lead vessels. Leviathan's main processing array fired, the massive energy beam cutting through space. A Vrax warship exploded in a silent flash. Before the debris had scattered, Leviathan fired again, crippling a second enemy vessel. But the Vrax adapted quickly. They coordinated their attacks, focusing fire on specific sections of Leviathan's shields. Warning alarms sounded as shield strength began to drop. They're targeting our weak points, Daniel warned. The areas we repaired after the first battle. Kevin checked the power systems, diverting additional power to those shield sections. The battle continued, Leviathan's massive weapons destroying or damaging several Vrax ships. But the human vessel was taking damage too. A coordinated Vrax attack broke through the shields in one section, and enemy fire tore into Leviathan's hull. Hull breach in sectors 4 through 6, damage control reported. Emergency bulkheads activated. Kevin felt the deck shudder beneath his feet as another hit struck home. They were hurting the Vrax, but not fast enough. The enemy still outnumbered them, and Leviathan couldn't sustain this level of damage for long. How long until the Concorde fleet arrives? Susan asked. 6 hours minimum, Paul replied grimly. Susan's expression didn't change, but Kevin could see the calculation in her eyes. They wouldn't last 6 hours at this rate. We need a new strategy, she said. Kevin, how close can we get to Jupiter's gravity well? Kevin checked the navigation systems. We can use it for a slingshot maneuver, but it's risky with the damage we've sustained. Not a slingshot, Susan clarified. I want to draw the Vrax in close to the planet. Kevin understood immediately. The radiation belts. Jupiter's magnetosphere would interfere with their sensors and communications. Exactly, Susan nodded. Set course for Jupiter. Full speed. Leviathan turned its bulk toward the massive gas giant, engines firing at maximum. The Vrax pursued, continuing to fire at the fleeing vessel. They think we're running, Daniel observed. Let them think that, Susan replied. As Leviathan approached Jupiter, the radiation levels began to rise. The vessel's shielding provided some protection, but systems started to experience interference. Entering the radiation belt, Kevin announced. Sensor efficiency dropping. The Vrax ships are experiencing the same effects, Daniel reported. Their formation is breaking up as they lose coordination. Susan smiled for the first time since the battle began. Now we show them what our monster can really do. Leviathan suddenly reversed thrust and turned to face the pursuing Vrax. With their sensors degraded by Jupiter's radiation, the enemy ships were caught by surprise. Leviathan fired all weapons simultaneously. A devastating barrage that tore through the disorganized Vrax formation. 4 enemy ships were destroyed immediately. 3 more took heavy damage and began to drift. The remaining Vrax vessels tried to regroup, but Leviathan pressed the advantage, targeting each ship in rapid succession. It's working, Paul said in amazement as they watched the tactical display. They can't coordinate their attacks in the radiation belt. But Leviathan was suffering too. Warning lights flashed across every console as systems overheated or failed under the strain of Jupiter's radiation and the ongoing battle. Main power fluctuating, Kevin reported as he worked to stabilize the systems. We can't stay here much longer. Just a little longer, Susan urged. We've almost broken them. The Vrak's commander seemed to realize the trap. The remaining enemy ships began to withdraw, pulling back from Jupiter's radiation belt. "They're retreating," Daniel announced. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Susan remained focused. "Don't celebrate yet. They're regrouping, not surrendering." She was right. The surviving Vrak ships formed a new attack formation at a safer distance from Jupiter. There were only 9 vessels left, but they were still a formidable force, especially against the damaged Leviathan. "Power levels critical," Kevin warned. "We need to pull back from the radiation belt or risk system failure." As Leviathan moved away from Jupiter, the Vrak's fleet began to advance again. Both sides had been bloodied, but neither was defeated. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, the sensor operator announced. "Concord signatures." The main view screen showed the Concord fleet arriving, 20 sleek vessels of advanced design. They positioned themselves between Leviathan and the Vraks. A communication came through. "Earth vessel, this is Commander Zenith of the Concord Defense Force. Stand down and allow us to handle the Vrak's threat." Susan looked at Paul, who nodded. "We accept your assistance, Commander," she replied. The Vraks didn't wait to see how the situation would develop. With Concord ships now joining the battle, they turned and fled, jumping to FTL as soon as they cleared Jupiter's gravity well. In the aftermath, Kevin stood with Susan, Paul, and the Concord inspectors on Leviathan's observation deck, looking out at the Concord fleet now surrounding them. "What happens now?" Kevin asked. "Will the Concord still punish us for building Leviathan?" The Eldar inspector stepped forward. "The Concord Council is reviewing the Naval Limitation Clause in light of recent events. It has become clear that the treaty did not adequately account for threats from outside Concord space.